Thanks very much, Alex, for that introduction. And can I first of all congratulate everyone who's been prepared to give up their Saturday, travel from all parts of the UK to come together to discuss what we're going to do in the period ahead, what our demands should be, and what type of action we need to win. So well done for everyone for coming today. Now, I want to start really with a couple of quotes. In September, when I was with my union doing some fringe meetings around the party political conferences, there was an extraordinary clip on the BBC Breakfast where they were interviewing a bond trader. Now, what was extraordinary about this bond trader was just how upfront he was about how he saw the situation. He said, and I quote, "He lies awake at night, getting excited about the crisis, hoping it gets worse because he makes millions of pounds personally out of the problems that we have." He then went on to say that people needed to understand that it wasn't governments who ruled the world, it was Goldman Sachs. Now, what's extraordinary about this is not just that that's how they see the world, but they were so craven and at the brass neck to just tell people on national TV. There's another quote this morning where Lord Freud, the welfare minister, Sean has referred to it, the welfare minister, by the way, who was brought to us by the last Labour government but then went to the Tories, actually said that the problem with GPs giving sick notes to people was that, quote, "it incubated a life of idleness." And what he said was we need to not allow GPs to give sick notes. They've got to go to some independent tribunal in order to see whether they really are fit for work. Now, these are chilling quotes. They tell us more about the period we're in than us putting across 100 articles in a trade union journal, because it's the other side telling people very clearly how they see things. And if you look at the events of the last couple of weeks, you see all of this writ large. Nobody in politics anywhere, it seems to me, in the mainstream political parties, are prepared to challenge the fact that what we see now is the absolute clearest signs that the world is indeed being run by the financial markets. It is financial markets that are making decisions that are affecting social policy in country after country after country, and that can actually lead us to a situation where they seem to have started selecting prime ministers. Now, I'm sure we all think it was a great day for the international working class when Silvio Berlusconi left office. What I don't think is so great, however, is when the markets are deciding that the people to replace him are not even elected politicians. An entire government in Italy is made up of technocrats. Now, when this starts happening, we are in very, very dangerous times indeed. Because what it tells us, I think, is on the back of the financial problems that we have, people who run the society that we all live in are becoming more and more emboldened. They're emboldened to think they can make cuts, attack people, make working people pay a price for a crisis that they didn't create, and now they can even start putting into place their favoured people to run our countries. And when that happens, we've got something to worry about. That's why the period we're in, I think, for those of us who've been in the unions now for 20 or 30 years, we have never been in a period potentially as important as the one we are entering. And we should take great heart from the fact that it's not just in the UK this is happening, but it's happening globally and it is happening across Europe. And I hope, like me, all of us will be inspired later on to hear from the leaders of some of the resistance in Greece, from the Greek trade unions who really are showing that they're not prepared to put up with it. Now, we know the scale of the threats, but let's remind ourselves, 1.3 million jobs to be cut in the next 3 years, services cut in every community across the UK, education cuts, meaning working class kids won't be able to afford to go into further and higher education, pensions and abandonment of our pensioners that sees Britain only has 3 countries worse than Britain in the West how they treat their pensioners: Cyprus, Estonia and Latvia. We have a situation where the government wants to cut a further £18 billion from the welfare state. We have job cuts, privatisation, pensions attacks in the public and the private sector, and we have a freeze on pay, which means that your living standards are currently being cut, if you're in the public sector, by 5.5% a year after you take into account inflation. Add to that youth unemployment at record levels, unemployment generally approaching 3 million, yet at the same time we're cutting 40,000 posts from the Department of Work and Pensions. The frontline public sector workers who need to deal with those who are unemployed and on welfare, having their jobs slashed and now facing compulsory redundancies. In the civil service alone, we've done a calculation that says just on the basis of the pension attack and on the basis of the pay freeze, the government stands to save £1.4 billion each and every year off the back of the workforce. It equates to a cut of £3,117 per civil service employee. You do the calculations and add in health, and add in local government, and add in education, the figures become astronomical. Therefore, we are clear, I think, that the scale of what we face is huge. The effects and consequences of losing will be ones that we will feel for generations to come. And therefore, I think one of the things we have to say is it therefore is a scandal currently in the UK that there are no politicians and political parties who speak up for us. Labour should be challenging. Labour should be challenging the role of the markets, and they should be challenging all of what is going on. Instead, we get Ed Miliband coming to the TUC and telling us we are wrong to strike. I'm particularly proud that my own union's delegation at the TUC, along with the NUT, perhaps should have known better, were the most badly behaved, and we led the booing and the heckling of Ed Miliband. We did it. I'll tell you why we did it. We did it because for a Labour leader to come to the annual Congress of the TUC and telling us off for striking is actually breathtaking. And it tells us how far away we are from having people who will advocate what we need. Ed Balls' 5-point plan to deal with this crisis, one of them is to cut VAT on DIY. Now, I'm sure that means we're all rushing off to B&Q to buy shelves and all the rest of it, but frankly, talk about fiddling when Rome burns. We don't need 10,000 extra council houses, we need millions of extra council houses. We need new school buildings, new hospital buildings. We need to invest in our public services, recognising the alternative we want is people in work, paying tax and insurance and improving the world in which we live, not out of work, claiming welfare as we get into a spiral of despair. So we have the alternative. And I think it is a fact in Britain at the moment that the people leading the opposition, leading the political alternative, are the trade unions. It is long overdue, but it's something I think we should all celebrate, that finally our organisations of the working class, our trade union movement, are now advocating an alternative and are leading the struggle. It means, therefore, November the 30th is one of the most important days of our lives. It means it is a chance to say that not only do we know there's an alternative, but we are going to fight for an alternative. But you know, we've also got to have a sober assessment as to where we are. It took an awful long time to get to the unions agreeing to call November the 30th. We had 3 years of debates on the TUC General Council, even to get to the demonstration that we saw in March. The debates about industrial action have been painful, as unions have taken an awful long time to wake up to the situation that we're in. That's why I think all of us here should accept. We all owe, I think, a massive debt of gratitude to the brave men and women in the UCU, the PCS, the ATL and the NUT who struck in June when many people sniped from the sidelines. And I can tell you the snipers were not just Francis Maude and his cronies on their side of the table. There was people in our own movement who said it was premature, it was divisive, and we were striking too early. I think June the 30th transformed the situation in this country like nothing we have seen for years. It showed 500,000 people striking, demonstrating, challenging what the government were doing on pensions. And it meant we were joined by pensioners, by UK Uncut, by students, by unemployed workers' centres, disabled activists, campaigners for better services. All of them joined us on the 30th of June to give us a glimpse of what life could be like if we were prepared to take things into our own hands. And therefore, if that's what happened when 4 unions and 500,000 go on strike, think what it'd be like when 29 unions and 2 to 3 million people go on strike in 10 days' time. It is going to be incredible. To give you an example of the mood that's out there, just in the last week, I've been, like many people here, touring around the country. Meetings done in the evenings, meeting done at lunchtime. Sheffield, 300 people attending a meeting in the leisure centre last Thursday night. Nottingham, this week, in a lunchtime, 200 people packed into a room to hear speakers about November the 30th. We had meetings that took place in Peterborough, only yesterday, of 150 people at a lunchtime rally. And the one I think that tells us quite a lot is that on Tuesday night I addressed a meeting in the evening in Lincoln where 50 people came. Now that may sound modest, believe you me, it's a pre-revolutionary situation when people in Lincoln are prepared to come in their droves. And in every one of these meetings, people were prepared to stand together. They were taking great heart from the Occupy movement, great heart from young people campaigning against unemployment, and great heart in what the unions were doing. Therefore, we've got to make November the 30th big and bold and loud and visible in every town, every village, every city. Marches, demonstrations, many people picketing as we can muster. And we've got to say to the government, this is a glimpse of what we can do when we stand together. And you know, I think we've also got to say on that day that it is absolutely critical that the leaders of the trade unions give a message to people that says November the 30th is the beginning, not the end. That there will have to be strike action as quickly as we can arrange it in 2012 to follow up early in the new year the action what we've taken. And you know, that's not going to be an argument that's easy to win. Everyone here in their union has got to start from the grassroots up, saying November the 30th is not a protest, it is a serious beginning of a strike that can force the government to go backwards. PCS's executive has already unanimously agreed that following November the 30th, we want all unions at the TUC to meet within 2 weeks, and we believe as a minimum there has to be at least a further public sector-wide general strike as early in 2012 as we can have it. Okay. If we do that, we will give people hope and we'll send the clearest signal possible to Francis Maud. And I have a vision of what things could look like. If November the 30th goes as well as we hope it does, when we get up on December the 1st, Britain will look different. Britain will look different to the place it looked when we went to bed on November the 29th. It looked different because nurses, teachers, civil servants, private sector workers, pensioners, students, the Occupy movement, all of us will have struck together, marched together, said no together in the most powerful message possible, and we have to say the world looks different, so you back off or we will do it again and again until we win. Thanks very much.